This week, I sat down with a woman of our faith who has experienced sexual assault. What makes her story even more complicated is that her perpetrator was someone who checked all the boxes. He was a member of our faith, a returned missionary, and a BYU student. We don't go into the details of her assault, but instead talk about how she processed it all. The betrayal, the reporting process, what healing has looked like, and how she's found peace and even forgiveness after something so heavy. My hope for this episode is that it will help even one person who has experienced sexual assault know that there is hope and that you're not alone. Welcome to Blonde Apologist. Hi friends, and happy Friday to you. I'm so glad that you're here. Today I wanted to have a chat about a couple things that have been on my mind before we get into the interview. I had a listener send me a video and she asked for my feedback and wanted to hear my thoughts on it. And I kind of felt like these chats at the beginning of the episodes are the perfect time to do stuff like that. So if you ever see something and you're curious how I feel about it, send it my way and maybe it will end up in the beginning of one of my episodes. But the video that she sent, there was this critic of the church going off on how upsetting it is that the church can make changes and not ever apologize for previous policies or previous things that caused hurt in others. And in the video, she's upset about the garment change, about how, they can just make this change and everyone's so grateful, as if their modesty culture didn't cause so much harm among women and young women and cause trauma for many women of our faith. So I just wanted to talk about how I see this change and other changes in the church, and if I think the church should apologize for stuff that was previously hurtful for other generations. Now, first, I don't want to dismiss anyone's pain. If there was pain that you've experienced because of the policies and the teachings of our church, me saying that was cultural does not dismiss the fact that it was probably very painful and affected you. But we have to look at the difference between doctrine, policy, and culture, because there is a difference. And because of something that you experienced, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the church's fault. A lot of what people are mad about were cultural interpretations and personal enforcements, not the doctrine. Did the doctrine or the First Strength of Youth ever say that shoulders were sinful? No. But did many people interpret it to mean that showing your shoulders was sinful and made you less worthy? Absolutely. We saw that everywhere. And I think in an attempt to get away from that culture and that misunderstanding that was out there, they made this change. To me, that's pretty obvious. But then why have it in the First Strength of Youth that we had to cover our shoulders at all? Why was that part of it? Well, my understanding was that it was preparing us to one day wear the temple garments, and the temple garments covered your shoulders for previous generations. For now, we still don't even have the tank tops here in America yet. But in the old First Strength of Youth, the one that told us to cover our shoulders, it says, your dress and appearance now will help you prepare for the time when you will go to the temple and make sacred covenants with God. So my understanding is that's why that was in there. Not because God wanted us to cover our shoulders because it was sinful. Not because he views that as something that is immodest. But because he was helping us prepare to one day wear temple garments and not need to buy a whole new wardrobe. Which personally, I understand. But this change is not the church being manipulative. Humans are always going to be human, and they're going to overcorrect and miss the mark and miss the bigger picture. And we see that happen literally all the time. And it was done with our modest culture for so many years. And again, I think this is an attempt. This change is the church's way of being let's step back because we've missed the mark. God gives principles and people mess them up sometime. That does not mean that the principle or that God or even the church was necessarily wrong. It means that we're learning. And even our church leaders have to learn things line upon line and precept upon precept like the rest of us. And I think this is a great change. I'm grateful for this change. Yet again, we'll see the critics online saying oh, these Mormon women, you can tell they're so excited about tank tops. It's obvious that they're just so brainwashed. They're so controlled that even getting scraps off the table makes them feel like they're so lucky. And I'm just so annoyed with seeing that narrative. My garments, I wear them because they bless my life. I have the opportunity to be in a covenant relationship that genuinely brings power into my life. So that's why I wear them. I can rejoice over having more options for clothes and also being less hot. And when I'm in hot circumstances, we were just in Mexico and I was literally walking around thinking like, oh yeah, these garments are made for these saints because it's so dang hot there. Anyways, I don't want to go into a whole thing about the new garments. I have an episode on it. So if you want to hear my thoughts, go to that episode. But to this critic, I just say, like, I don't know what you want the church to apologize for. Apologize for people who interpreted and twisted. For the young women's leader that made you feel bad about your prom dress, like, that wasn't the church. That was her manipulation. That was her interpretation that she felt justified because of the For Strength of Youth, but still she missed the mark. I feel like I had parents who helped me know that my worth wasn't tied to whether or not my shoulders were showing or what I was wearing. And so this change isn't something that has made me feel confused. But I totally empathize with you if it does. Like, we totally all had different experiences growing up. I also didn't grow up in Utah. So I'm grateful for change and more changes to come. So let's buckle up and just look forward to it instead of being so confused. I think the reason why it can be so painful is because the truth was distorted, and it can make you question it all, like, and be confused because you thought the truth was one thing, and this change makes you wonder, okay, well, was that not right? And some of the practices and our culture around modesty were wrong, and we have to reevaluate to be better. And the church is living, and we're just going to keep getting better and trying to make our culture better as well as we try to align ourselves with the principles that are in front of us. So that was the first thing I wanted to discuss. And next I wanted to talk about just this big blessing that I've been experiencing in my life because of my calling. I'm currently serving as a counselor in the Relief Society presidency in my ward, and that is a pretty high demand calling. And I feel like people often criticize our church for being so high demand and expecting so much of its members, and that's part of the challenge of being a member. But I've been feeling so blessed because of my calling lately. And one of the things that we do in our presidency is we try to have regular visits with our sisters. We like to sit down with them, to meet up with them, go on walks with them, just be with our sisters as much as we can as a presidency. And a couple of weeks ago, I was going to go out and do visits in the evening. And to be gone for the evening, I was going to have to figure out if my husband was going to be able to have the kids and get things organized, just make sure it was going to work out that I could be gone for a couple hours at night. And it felt like such a burden, and I was kind of dreading this night of like being away to go do visits. And that was my mistake because I went and I did visits. I was gone for probably 2 hours, and on my way home I was just like beaming with joy, just feeling so lifted in my life because I went and visited and spent time with some of the women in my ward. And it just was reminding me that when we look outward, we are lifted in our lives, and our trials and our burdens are lightened when we focus on other people and we serve them. And I forget that all the time. And I feel like we live in a society that tells you that you should set boundaries and take care of yourself and say no to stuff. And I get that idea, and I get where they're coming from. There's no glory in running yourself into the ground. The God that invited us to be anxiously engaged in a good cause is the same God that told us to not run faster than we have strength. So you have to know your limits, and you do set boundaries. But let's not forget that when we look outside of ourselves and we serve other people around us, that we are then lifted and strengthened. And I've been feeling that so much. I did visits again just yesterday. And I wanted to get online and make a quick video and just say like, hey, go serve someone, like look outside yourself, go help someone, because it will bless your life so much. And I don't do it for the blessings I forget, and then I get to be a part of that. And I'm reminded why we are invited to lift each other up and look outwards. And last night I was listening to a conference talk by President Camille Johnson, and she shared this, and I feel like it's exactly what I am trying to articulate. She said, our covenantal blessing is to partner with Jesus Christ in providing relief, both temporal and spiritual, to all of God's children. We are conduits through which he provides relief. And I just that's amazing. It's our covenantal blessing to do this, to help each other. And I really do just want to be a conduit, someone who Christ can work through to reach other people and lift them. So it's just interesting because what used to be so overwhelming and stress me out about this calling and the time it would take away, I already feel stretched thin. I already feel so overconsumed by all the things that I have to get done in my life. My calling has now become one of my greatest blessings in my life. And I just wanted to share that briefly here at the beginning. So try it. If you're struggling, go find someone to serve. Go visit someone, and I promise your day's going to get better from there. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the interview, and thanks for joining me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode. Today, I am joined by Bailey. Bailey, would you start and just introduce yourself to my listeners? Tell us a little bit about you, because I actually don't know a ton about you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me here. So my name is Bailey, and I attended BYU back from 2018 to 2021. I have since graduated, and I am married to my husband, and we have a son together. He's about 15 months now. And we don't live in Utah anymore. We're actually way across the country, so that my husband, he's attending dental school, and I get the privilege of being at home with my baby and raising him. I work briefly each day remotely, but other than that, I get to just raise my baby and be a dental school wife, and it's been great.
Okay, so cool. So Bailey reached out to me and offered to share her story of being sexually assaulted and healing and recovering from that. And I'm so grateful for you, Bailey, because I feel that this is something that needs to be talked about. And I think my community is a great place to do that, because I know women, especially in religious communities who do experience SA, can feel so isolated, so alone, and feel like they're the problem in some ways. And so if anything, I hope for this episode that we can just give awareness, help people feel that there is healing, there is hope if this is something that you've encountered, and just know that you're not alone, you're loved. And Bailey's gonna talk to us about her experience with healing. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So without going into details, can you just briefly share what your life looked like during your time at BYU and what led up to this experience?
Yeah. So I was a sophomore at BYU, so I'd already had a whole year at BYU under my belt, as well as a whole year worth of college dating as well. And it was actually the winter semester of my sophomore year. So it was a new semester. It was the winter January semester. So new semester, I had just moved to a new apartment complex as well. So I had a new ward, new roommates, and it was, I don't know, it was just a lot of new beginnings for me at that time. And I had been on and off of dating apps during my freshman year, just to kind of jumpstart the college dating experience, because I really was kind of inexperienced as far as I didn't date a ton in high school, and so I just felt that was an easy way. And honestly, I had a pretty good experience my freshman year and doing that, and but obviously no long-term relationships came out of it, which was totally okay for your freshman year, just a little 18-year-old. But yeah, so since I had just moved to, a new apartment, new area of town, everything was new to me. I decided to get back on that dating app, the church supported one, or I don't know if it's church supported, but the one for LDS singles, Mutual. So yeah, I found myself on Mutual, and based on his profile, he honestly like checked all the boxes. There was, he was on Mutual, so you could tell that there must be some relation to the church. And then when you're swiping and looking at profiles, there's a brief bio, and there is a spot for you to put in like where you served your mission if you did serve. And so I saw that he had served a mission, so he was a returned missionary, and that there's a spot for you to put like what school you're attending, and he did put in that he was at BYU, and not necessarily that like BYU was like a checked box for me. Like I didn't care where they were going
Right.
to school, but just like it was something we had in common because I was there, he was there,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I, of course, thought he was pretty attractive. Like thought he was cute, and so swiped up. The red flag that maybe I started to see was that it took him a while to like ask me out on a date, and that isn't necessarily a red flag in general. It was just like 2 weeks or so of talking, and like he never really like said like, oh, I want to take you on a date sometime, which is cool, like taking your time, or like mainly just like not feeling a spark, so you just kind of want to continue as friends kind of thing. But there just was no discussion of like kind of what he was feeling. um and then eventually he wanted, he was like, I'm not on this app a ton, but I want to keep talking. Like, can I get your Snapchat and we can talk through that? And that was like another red flag. It was just like, we're adults. Like, we could have like exchanged phone numbers and texted, right? Like,
Yeah. And what
and
year
that's
is
what I would.
this?
This was 2020, beginning of 2020.
Yeah. Like, I just feel like Snapchat, I mean, I don't know. I'm like a little bit older than you, but like Snapchat
Hmm.
seems like a sketchy way to communicate with people. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Because
when
like
you're adults and you have
apps
a
aren't
phone.
safe. Yes, right. And so yeah, like which I being on Mutual before, like Snapchat was a common thing, but like sometimes it was like Snapchat and a phone number or whatever, and so I just phone number just seemed like the more mature adult way to communicate versus through Snapchat. So that was like one thing that I was like, okay. Um, and then the next red flag was just that when he did ask me out, it was like that same day kind of thing, like, oh, like, do you want to meet up and like hang out later? And I was like, and like to me, like a formal first date, they can still be casual and fun, but like planned a few days in advance at least, like not same day. um and like he didn't mention like, oh, let's go on a hike, or let's go get some ice cream, let's go do something like out in public, out to get to know each other better. It was just like, let's hang out sometime after I'm finished with homework. So those were a few things.
Okay, so you mentioned with Mutual, like you noticed that he checked a lot of our religious boxes. Like you're like, okay, this is a guy that is at BYU. He's a returned missionary. He's obviously a member of our faith if he's on Mutual or some association with the church. I feel
Hmm.
like for me, when I was dating, I would definitely take those as like, okay, I'm comfortable, and like I would almost be overconfident in those checked boxes. But then
Hmm.
once you're on the date with him and you're actually getting to know him in person, were there red flags about him in this interaction with him beforehand?
Yeah. So I guess leading up to that day, so I kind of resuming from the last question is, so when he finished with homework and wanted to hang out, that's, that same day, that same conversation that we were having, it was pretty late. And so obviously that was a red flag right off the bat. And that's kind of where I wish I would have just been like, no, it's too late. Let's do this another day where you can hang out earlier, But but I was like, yeah, we can hang. And I don't know where exactly the idea came from, if it was him or me or who, whatever. But we just decided like, let's just watch a movie over at my apartment. And I didn't have a car, so that maybe that's why that came up. Where I was like, I can't really get to your apartment unless you come pick me up. So like it's probably easier and to save time because it's already so late for you just to come over kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So but as soon like so when he said he was coming over to my apartment, I just got like the worst feeling, like just the gut feeling that this, is, and I know now that that was like the spirit kind of warning me of like what is was going to happen. And so I just didn't feel right about it, and so I did actually message him back on Snapchat because I didn't have his phone number, and I said, you know what, actually I think it's a little late, and maybe it's not a good idea you come over. Like I use those words, I don't think it's a good idea. And he, by the time he messaged me back, he was like, oh well, like I just got to your apartment, and I was like really looking forward to seeing you. And so I just kind of, I felt bad like just turning him away when I totally shouldn't not have.
Yes.
Like I'm a people pleaser like by nature, and but like looking back and just like knowing to trust your like gut feeling, like I know I should have like stood by that. But so when he was like, I'm here, and I just got here and we can do something really quick, like it doesn't have to be like a whole movie kind of thing. So I was like, okay. So I did like tell him like I'm in apartment number blah blah blah. He came. He didn't knock on the door because he it was late, so he probably didn't want to um, like wake up roommates or anything. So he just kind of texted me and said, I'm outside your door. And so I let him in. And honestly, the first like 10 minutes or so, while like when he got in and we like sat on the couch together, we're talking, trying to find a movie to watch, like it was so normal. Like it was easy to have conversations with him. He was respectful, and like he got talking about his family, and his family seemed like really great people. And just, and we talked and knew that we had, or I found out that we had more things in common as we got talking, like where we grew up and different things like that. So everything seemed really normal. And then yeah, like, and then we turn on the movie, and so things quiet down because we're trying to watch the movie and stuff. But from there it just kind of went more. The intention was, I mean, when you do late night movies at people's apartments on a date, like you don't really do as much watching the movie as you should, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Netflix and
anyways,
chill is like a booty
mhm,
call.
exactly, yeah. And um, so yeah, like we started kissing and stuff, and that wasn't necessarily like being a 19-year-old girl in college, that wasn't a weird practice to me, in that like I was okay at that time in my life like kissing on first dates if like if I wasn't like weirded out by the guy, or like he hadn't done something up to that point that like made me like really unattracted to him, like personality wise or like manners wise. But like up to this point, he had been like in person, he had been pretty respectful. Um, and so
Yeah.
that
No,
just,
I don't
yeah.
think you have to justify it. To me, it makes sense too. Like, you're
Hmm.
dating, this is the experience that 19-year-olds are having
Hmm.
at BYU.
Hmm.
So I don't think you necessarily put yourself in a dangerous situation, especially because it was at your house. Like, I would almost say, like, you were set up to be in a safe space.
Right, and exactly. Like that's what I kind of was running through my mind too. Is like, well, I wouldn't want to like go get in this, since I don't have a car and couldn't go meet him somewhere like more public. Like I wouldn't want to go get in his car because I have no control of where he's actually taking me, and I wouldn't want to go to his apartment where I'm stuck there without a car. So yes, and to me too, that seemed like the safest option with the circumstance. Was it was late, we couldn't really do anything in public because everything's closed, but it was at my place where I'm comfortable and I know my way around, and I had roommates home. They were asleep, but still, and if there was an emergency or whatever, I had roommates home.
So, thinking back on the night again, without going into detail, like what would you tell women? Like, is there advice you would give of like how to handle the situation differently to have protect yourself better?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I wish I would have like trusted my gut feeling from the get-go when I first like didn't think that it was a good idea for him to come over so late. And I just think it's just so smart and safe. Just kind of set like a general rule of thumb for yourself when you are dating, and especially if it's like a blind date or someone you haven't met yet, like from dating apps or like someone set you up, to make sure that the first date's like daylight, or like it could be evening hours, but like somewhere in public where like there's other people around, or try to make it a group date or a double date. It's like because you don't always know the intentions of someone, even if they are the cookie cutter boy, and member of the church, that they appear that way on social media or on paper. But if you don't have like almost like personal references, like if it's like a friend that knows this person and they can kind of vouch for them, then like I'd say that's like totally safe, like go for it. But because this was like a complete like almost strangers meeting up kind of thing, like, and then like if you're actually in that situation, I think it's just smart to almost like don't be afraid to like bring the conversation up and like set boundaries like right from the start of things, be like, yeah, we can watch this movie, like, yeah, like we can cuddle or kiss, but like that's all we're gonna do. Or even if you don't want to like kiss or whatever, just be like, yeah, we can watch this movie, and like, but yeah, just kind of speak up and like let them know what you're comfortable with, because if they kind of have different intentions, that might change their mind, if they even want to like want to come over.
Yeah. What were some of the initial emotional and spiritual challenges that you faced after this night?
Yeah, I really did struggle to even process it as a sexual assault at first. I knew what sexual assault was. Like, I was a sociology major, and I, with like kind of an emphasis in criminology. And so I took all those classes and everything. I knew what it was, but for some reason, when it happened to me, I just kept, and it must have been like the people pleaser in me just kept like giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying, like, to myself, like, because I didn't verbalize it, he didn't know, or like because my body's response was to freeze, and so because I didn't like physically try to stop it, that he probably thought it was fine to keep going or whatever. And so emotionally, I really did struggle, and because of that, I just did not want to tell anybody about it for so long, because I just thought immediately that the blame would be placed on me, and I was already placing the blame on myself. Um, and when it was happening as well, I know that like the very first thought that went into my head was, wow, I need to go talk to my bishop. Like as if I was committing this sin in this moment. And I don't know if this is just something with like kind of a little bit around church culture and how we teach like sexual activity and stuff, and like the law of chastity, but like that was what I was thinking in that moment. But it wasn't until like later on that I realized, like, but that was not what I wanted, and that's not what I intended to happen, and therefore like I shouldn't have to go talk to my bishop to like repent or report of the sin. If
Right.
anything, if I want to go talk to my bishop, it's to receive guidance and counsel on what I should do next, as far as like next steps, reporting, or trying to forgive, or any of that kind of stuff. Like I and I think just because I did have that initial thought, like I almost kind of put that mindset on myself that like I was doing something really bad.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that culturally we associate any like sexual act to be sinful before marriage. But let's be so clear that if it's not what you intended, if it was forced upon you, like you are not accountable as the sinner in that situation. And I don't want any like young woman or young adult or any woman, if you're old too, to think that and to
Yeah.
feel that shame. And I know that God doesn't want them to feel that as well. So, how did you get over that feeling and past that?
This experience, the assault happened in February, and then just like a few weeks later, beginning of March, everything shut down during COVID. And it was kind of like a tender mercy for me, honestly, because up until that point, because I wasn't close with my roommates yet because they were brand new to me, and like anybody from my ward, or even my bishop at that point, like my student ward bishop, because everything was so new to me, I like was like suffering like alone at this point. And so the only thing I wanted to do was move home, which was out of state. So like it wasn't like I could just go home on the weekends or anything because I didn't have a car and my home was out of state. So I just like wanted more than anything in the world was to just go home and be able to heal with like my family and stuff, with their support. And so when COVID happened and like BYU announced that they were shutting down like in-person classes and going completely remote, and then they even encouraged students that could move home to move home so that they could quarantine at home, I was like, that was like an answer to my prayers, really, because never in a million years did I think something like that would happen. Allowing me to go home early, but still
Yeah.
complete my semester. Because I could have easily gone home and withdrawn from all my classes, but then like I'd have a W on my transcript for every
Yeah.
single one of those classes. You know, like I didn't want to do that. Um, and so when I got home and did end up telling my family about it, my mom encouraged me to meet with like our home ward bishop, not because she thought I had done anything wrong, but she thought that maybe I could, receive some guidance and some peace of mind and like just kind of because she wanted me to report it to at least to BYU, to like their Title IX office where they deal with reports of this nature. And I was so against it because I was just like I said, I was blaming myself, and I was like, maybe he didn't know he was what I wanted. Maybe he didn't know that I didn't want him to do that. Blah blah blah. All of this stuff, all the excuses I made for him, really. Um, but I did finally to meet with my bishop, my home ward bishop, and it was such a great experience. Like I know some people don't always have the best experience meeting with bishops when they're talking about sensitive things like that. But for me, like he didn't ask questions. He didn't say like, "Oh, well, was there anything else that happened that night that you need to repent of or whatever?" Like the
Mm,
first thing he asked me was, "Are you okay? And do you feel safe returning to campus when and if you do return to campus?" And he just made sure that I, as a person, was doing okay. Um, and then he said, as a bishop and as a father to daughters, I would recommend, or I would encourage you to report it to the school, because if the school was made aware of this kind of behavior, I'm sure they would not want somebody walking around their campus that is willing to do this to at least one girl, maybe more. Because at this point we didn't know like I didn't know much about him because it was like the first time I'd ever met him and I never met up with him again. So that helped me, like reaching out to the bishop and just kind of getting an outsider's opinion on it was nice, because of course my family, like, they're emotionally involved because it's me, and so
of
of course they're
course.
going to want me to report it. So it was nice getting some like an outsider's opinion. um, and then um, there was a talk or a BYU speech by Ben Ogles. I think that's how you say his last name. It's called Agency, Accountability, and the Atonement of Jesus Christ, and just like the application to sexual assault. And so I listened to that a lot, because it was specific, like it was addressed to BYU students, and it was very specific to like victims of sexual assault and just like the prevalence of it on campus. And I listened to it a lot during those like that period of time in the months after when I was like healing from it. And he addresses the perpetrators in it, he addresses the victims in it, and he addresses just like people who like I would encourage everybody to watch, or anybody to go listen to it or read it, because it could help anybody in this situation. If someone comes to you, if someone trusts you enough to come to you and say, this what happened to me, like it would help you like kind of put things in perspective to know how to respond. And then of course for the victims and the perpetrator, like for the perpetrators, like he just like um, encourages you to go talk to your bishop to repent and utilize the atonement and really strive to get better and even get professional help if you need to. Um, and I wanted to share like a excerpt from it that really helped me, because there was a section when he was addressing the victims about self-blame and just how prevalent it was, and because I was dealing with that a lot, this really helped kind of change my mindset of it. And so he says, through my professional interactions and church interviews with victims of sexual abuse and assault, I know that sometimes victims try to figure out why these bad things happen to them. Some wonder if they did something wrong to deserve this circumstance. Some question their own behavior and wonder if they did something to encourage the other person to ignore their wishes, as if they somehow invited this behavior, especially if they made other decisions around that time of the incident that they now see as questionable. They may think they are somehow partially responsible for what happened to them. But you are not responsible for that which you did not consent. That is the essence of agency. Let me illustrate with a personal experience. In 1990, our family moved to a very small community in southeast Ohio called the Plains. On the first night, someone broke into our car and took everything they wanted to keep. When I discovered the theft, several thoughts came into my mind. If I had only parked closer to the house and away from the street. It's my own fault. I should have locked the car doors. How naive of me to think we were safe just because this is a small rural town. If I had been more alert, I could have prevented this from happening. Do you see how I took responsibility for a crime committed by someone else? No matter where I had parked, how naive I had been, or whether I had locked the doors or not, no one has the right to take things from my car without my permission. I was not responsible for the theft, yet I automatically took the blame because I could imagine things that I thought I should have done differently. This is a common response to victimization. Similarly, in the much more serious and harmful case of sexual assault, when one's agency and ability to determine what happens to their own body are disregarded, the victim may automatically respond to the situation with feelings of guilt or shame because they can imagine ways in which they think they could have or should have avoided the situation. So just hearing that perspective really helped me. Like when you almost like put like the little, I guess, metaphor, or the other like example he showed that had to do with like theft. Like it makes sense. Like, yeah, you can ask all these questions and say, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done that. But it still like wasn't gonna stop the thief from finding ways to do it. Like even if the car doors had been locked, they may have still tried to break windows to get their way in if there was something in that they wanted. And so that talk, like it's just full of examples like that that just really helped me because I felt it like very personally.
That's so good. I'll make sure to share it with
Okay.
when we post this episode so people can go listen. I also just hearing your experience, I'm so grateful that you had family and you had a bishop that were so like supportive of you in this experience. And I hope that and pray for that for every person that finds themselves in this situation. Did you have a hard time going back to BYU? Did you have a hard time getting back into the dating pool after this happened?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. So I did go back to BYU that fall of 2020. BYU announced that they would, have a mixture of in-person classes and hybrid classes and online classes. And so I also just was like, I had the summer at home, the spring and summer at home. And so I was ready to kind of get back and start to move on and get back to normal life. So I was eager and excited, but definitely nervous, especially because my assumption was at this point that he was still going to be on campus. And so I was just nervous, like walking around campus. I walked around that whole entire semester with my head down, just looking at my feet while I was walking because I didn't want to run into him. I didn't want to be seen by him. I didn't want to have to see him And so I just, I was almost paranoid every time I was on campus that anywhere I looked, I was the potential to see him, which is a little crazy because it's like a really, there's so many students, like thousands
No,
of
no,
students,
no.
and like,
I would feel that way
but
too. I would be
yeah.
so, oh, I mean, I would go on a bad date and tell someone I didn't want to go out with them again and be so worried I was going to run into them on campus. Like, I would be that way too.
Yeah,
So, had you
exactly.
reported him yet at this point?
I had. So that had we were like actively in the investigation with the school, um, and so with reporting, so I'd finally decided to report in the summer of 2020. So it was like probably about 4 months after the assault had happened, and I like after meeting with the bishop, that really helped me. Another, I guess, resource that I had utilized was meeting with BYU's victim advocate. She also really helped me just because I met with her and I said that I don't like I wanted her to walk me through the reporting process because I obviously was new to it and wanted to know like kind of what to expect. And so, and I also told her I kind of want to share with you a little bit about what happened and just kind of get your thoughts on it as far as like reporting goes. And I kind of told her a little bit what happened, and she said, what happened to you, like by definition, that is rape, and that's a serious crime that BYU has no interest in having a student on campus that has engaged in something like that. So she was 100% behind me on like encouraging me to report, and she did explain to me how the reporting process goes, which made me feel better about like reporting it as well, just kind of like being a little bit familiar with like what the steps would be and what it would entail. So between talking to those two people, that really I took the step just like within a few weeks of speaking with each of them, and I did report to BYU's Title IX office. And they emailed me back within a few business days and said that they received my report and that they have reason to believe that the student I reported has victimized other students on campus. I thought that was interesting. So we set up a Zoom meeting, and I was kind of eager to kind of have them elaborate a little bit. And upon meeting with one of the officers at, like the head officer or whatever, with the Title IX office, she said that they had received another report from another young woman, or just another, female student at BYU, reporting the same individual, and that her assault had happened just a month before mine. And she had reported it more like right away. Like I think in January she had reported it, and I didn't report till like it was like June or something. And so at that point, it was like an isolated incident. So she chose not to do anything, like not to open an investigation or anything, but it just remained with the Title IX office under, this male student's file. So then if another one were to come in, it would flag and say, oh, there's another one in here, like another report against him in here. And so that's what happened.
That is crazy. So, what ended up happening after the investigation? Did he get kicked out of BYU?
Yeah, so it went on for quite a while. So, like, of course, it was all summer.
Did he ever reach? Sorry, another
You're
question.
good.
Once the investigation was open, he knew about it. Did he ever reach out to you to like apologize or talk to you?
No, but I think that was part of like I think that was part. I don't know what like policy or rules that like the Title IX office told him was like don't attempt to reach out to the girl. That you'll have an opportunity to like give your side of the story and like apologize or whatever, but like you do it through me kind of thing. So like all of our like communications basically were with an in-between middleman, which was like the investigator. Basically they gave him an allegation sheet of what I alleged happened, and then he had a chance to respond to that and kind of give his side of the story, which he did. And then I had a chance to kind of refute any of the facts, quote unquote facts, that he mentioned in his side of the story. So then once all of that was done, they compiled all of the information they had across all the witnesses, all the interviews, all the report, um, and they came up with like a final decision on whether or not it's more likely than not that the allegations are true. And I didn't get that final report until October. So it took quite a while, like halfway
Mm-hmm.
through fall semester, basically. But they did find that he was, like that he had violated the, sexual misconduct policy at BYU or whatever. And under Utah law that he had, um, under Utah law, legal like laws, he had engaged in forcible sexual abuse and object rape is what the Utah laws for it are. Um, and yeah, anyway, so from there, like it basically just goes to like the disciplinary action sanctions committee, whatever it's called, and they go over the whole report and to kind of decide what his what's going to happen to him. But ultimately, it ended up going back to um, the disciplinary action board, and they suspended him for like a couple years. Basically, they said he won't be able to enroll in classes at BYU till spring of 2020 something. I don't remember what it was, but this was April 2021 when that decision was made, and I was personally happy with that because I was like, I only have a few like years left, or at this point I was a junior, so I only had one more year left. So I was like, I'll be long gone, like from BYU by the time he's even eligible to come back. But like most people wouldn't wait around for a couple years. So my guess is he would just like transfer somewhere else, like to kind of move on with his life and get his education somewhere else. So I was happy with that.
Are you glad you went through this whole process of reporting him?
Absolutely, because now, like especially knowing that there wasn't someone else too that had this experience with him, and who knows if, because it took me so long to report, who knows if he had done it again after me, and they just never reported it or never wanted to report it, like I was so against it at first.
Yeah. Okay, I would love to talk now and go more into your healing process. And
hmm
in the scriptures, we're told that like we can be made whole through Jesus Christ. And that is something that everyone should feel in their life. And when this something like assault happens, it could be easier to just move on and just like try to put distance between you and this that happened.
hmm
But to be made whole in Christ is more than just moving on. It's becoming complete again. Do you feel like you've reached that and been made whole? And how did you get there?
yeah, it definitely took me a while to feel whole again, but for me, I just knew I didn't want to let this experience break me or even like break my faith in the gospel. I have known other people to have something so traumatic like this happen to them, and then they question, like, is God really aware of me? Does God really love me if he let something like this happen to me? And I just like knew I did not want to ever adopt that mindset. Um, because I knew like that like I have a testimony in the gospel in many parts of the gospel, and a lot of my testimony in a lot of parts of the gospel were strengthened through this process. I mean, even back when I was talking about how like I had that gut feeling, and I know now that it was the spirit kind of warning me of what the night was going to kind of turn into, like even all the way from that, and just knowing that God never left me. God was always there with me, and Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ knew what I was going through. He knew the feelings of shame and self blame and like guilt that I was feeling, and He put like earthly angels. He put people in my life that also really, really contributed to my healing. My now husband, like I met him that fall semester when I was like in the depths of going through this investigation, and I was pretty open with him. Um, once we kind of started getting to know each other a little bit more after a few dates, I was pretty open with him and about it, and eventually, it led to us. I mean, our relationship was not like, foundational on that. It's just like he just showed me pretty early on that how much he cared about me, and because of how he helped me through this process, um, and I know that God and Christ were really instrumental in like the timing of things throughout the whole process, and yeah, the people that he put in my life that really helped me get through the situation.
That's really beautiful. Has there been like a process of forgiveness that you've gone through? Do you feel like I struggle with forgiving people who do me wrong? So I am not asking as if I'm an expert and know how to forgive people who do me wrong. So, but I guess, have you thought about that and where are you at with that?
Yeah, obviously it wasn't immediate. Like it was well after the investigation was all done and settled, I think. Um, but yes, it definitely wasn't like a moment where I was just like, I need to forgive him, like he's been forgiven, like anything like that. It was definitely a gradual thing for me. And as I've just moved forward in my life and have, um, and not like moving on necessarily, or like like a forgive and forget kind of thing, because like I'll never forget something like so traumatic like that, but I just don't want to associate it with him, I guess, because he's still a person. And although he made like a very bad mistake, I have to just forget. Like, I've decided I need to forgive him in hopes that he took the correct steps, with, as far as repenting and seeking help from Jesus and God, and his bishop, his family, whoever he needed. I just have to hope and have faith that he's doing what he can to improve his life, because I want him to have the things that I have. I have like a happy marriage and a beautiful life and a family, like creating your own family. And I want that for him. Of course I do, because he's still a person and he's still like a son of God. And so I know that the first step to almost like allowing that to happen for him is for me to be able to forgive him. Um, and so, and because I haven't spoken to him, he doesn't necessarily know that I've forgiven him. So that's another thing of faith, is just hoping that God, um, can kind of show him that I have forgiven him and that he can forgive himself and move on.
That's so big of you. Like that seriously, Bailey, is so like courageous. I know in my life, forgiving people who don't know that they did wrong, or like almost like try to like push it away and don't acknowledge or take
Mm-hmm.
accountability for the mistake, for the pain. Those are the people that I have the hardest time forgiving. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't sound
Yeah.
like you really got that acknowledgement from him, or that even apology.
Right.
But I have also learned like there is such a weight that of heaviness that I don't like carrying when I carry, like it's a burden to
Mm-hmm.
hold
Exactly.
grudges and to carry
Yes.
that pain. And part of the healing process is giving that burden over to Christ, and
Mm-hmm.
letting God be the judge at the end of the day, not
Yeah.
me. So
Exactly. Yes.
that's amazing of you. Um,
Thank you.
what advice would you give to anyone who has experienced SA and is struggling right now?
It's, I know that it's hard, and I know that it's easy to like get into like a slump and not really be able to see much hope for like a better future, that you're ever going to be able to move past it, especially if, um, you especially if like PTSD is something that you struggle with from the assault, or any type of abuse that you've, experienced. Like there's PTSD and so many other mental health,
Yeah.
conditions that can arise from that. And so I know it's really hard to see the bright side of things, but just know that it just with time it'll happen. It didn't happen for me right away, not even like the day after the investigation came to a close and he officially was suspended. Like, it's not like I was like, okay, now I can begin healing, or now I'm healed. It took me some time to process it because so much happened in like a span of a little over a year, um, that it still took some time. But reach out to, I mean, if you know they're if the someone is someone who's active in the church, reach out to your bishops or your other priesthood leaders. Get blessings. I received a couple like priesthood blessings during that time, and during like even now, with anything that might arise like mentally from that. My husband is great, and like bishops and everything. So don't be afraid to like ask for blessings. Reach out to family members or like close friends that you can trust the information with. I know it's kind of scary to talk to people about what happened, um, but honestly, it can help. On just almost like putting getting it out of your head and kind of out into the universe is just a little therapeutic. So do it in
Mm-hmm.
therapy. Do it with your best friend. Do it with your spouse. Do it with someone, because it kind of helps get just you're just not fighting with them in your head so much.
I think that's really good advice. Okay, last thing. How can we as a church community better support victims of assault?
I would love to, and I feel like this is happening. Like, as the church in the last few years has really begun to make a shift with a lot of like how they teach things and just being more sensitive about different things and people's paths and lives and experiences. So I think how we teach youth the law of chastity and teach them about reserving sex for marriage, I think that is a big thing that would be great. And even, I don't know, like find a way to bring it up when we are teaching the youth, like um, knowing the difference between like consent and not consent, so that if
Mm,
some they were to be involved in a situation like that, they don't have to feel so terrible about themselves, um, if that like thinking that they had just broken the law of chastity and that they aren't worthy to go to the temple or do anything like that. So I would love to kind of see a shift in how we teach the law of chastity, and helping them to understand the difference between consent and not consent and agency and all of that. Um, and but just like in general and in adult life, just believing victims. It doesn't happen too often when there are false accusations. I know that like sometimes they get like a bad rap because they're like in the media when they're like from big celebrities or whatever. But in the general population, I feel like, and especially in the church, I feel like that's not really as common. And so just start by believing them, and that's already going to help them tremendously. Um, so I think that's what I would say.
okay, I loved that answer as well. Well, thank you for taking your time to come on today and for just being courageous and sharing this story like that. That's hard to do, but you're amazing, and I know that it's gonna help. It's gonna help people.
Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest hope. I know that we hadn't met previously to this, and I yeah reached out to you, but it had been weighing on me, and I just felt that after it's been 5 years for me now, and I haven't really talked much about it, and I just feel like my experience, because it's so specific to like the church, like within the church, and even specific at like BYU too. I just felt like there's probably more people than I think that could benefit from this, and that um, could benefit from hearing my experience and hearing about the resources I was able to utilize. And so I really, really hope that this is helpful, and that's like the biggest driver for this.
Well, you're doing it. So thanks again for being here.